My parents stole my estate, lied and cried when I shut them out. Now they're begging while I lock down every dollar they thought was theirs. When I became engaged, I kept my $1.2 million estate secret just in case. 2 days after the wedding, my sister came over, smiling with Dad, and said, "We signed the house into my name. Mom said you'd agree." I glanced at them and replied, "I never said yes." That night, I contacted the bank to review the documents. By daybreak, they were outside the gate, holding boxes and wailing. I didn't expect they'd make it so plain. Not 2 days after the wedding. I had just returned from a calm meal with Rachel, the type of evening that occurs when the excitement has gone off and you can breathe again. We were unpacking boxes, folding towels, and debating over where the mug should go. Then came a knock. It was my sister. She smiled as if she had already won. Dad stood alongside her, silently. He always caused damage during a mission. "Hey," she exclaimed too brightly. "We just wanted to swing real quick." "Oh, and Mom said you'd agree. So we went ahead and signed the house into my name." She held out a stack of documents as if it were a birthday card. I looked down. My name was not there. Not once. The estate, which I'd kept hidden, inherited but never flaunted, was now titled to her. "Mom said you'd agree," she continued, as if saying it again would make it true. I didn't shout or argue. I simply blinked once, glanced at each of them and said, "I never said yes." I then shut the door. I didn't even stay in the room long enough to notice whether they knocked again. I didn't care. I walked into the bedroom, got my laptop, and sat down with the serenity that only comes when your body becomes colder than your thoughts. I initially logged into the estate account, then the bank, and finally the title office's internet interface. Step by step, I clarified access privileges through the appropriate channels. The security firm received an alarm. So did the lawyer I had secretly maintained on retainer. That night, a formal letter of clarification was sent. By daybreak, I was receiving motion alerts at the front gate. They were back, holding boxes and wailing. But I didn't open the door because something changed in that moment. I wasn't shocked, actually. I was disappointed, but more importantly, I was done. I had gone into this marriage hoping that they would finally respect the line between love and leverage. However, this demonstrated that they considered me as a resource rather than a brother or son. They made their move, and I did mine. I did not sleep that night. Not because I was upset, but because my brain refused to stop showing me everything at once. It began with the line, "Mom said you'd agree." 4 words. 4 detonators. While Rachel slept, I glanced at the ceiling, and memories came flooding back one by one. All connected to the same logic, which is actually assumption, entitlement, and manipulation disguised as family. When I was 12, I used my saved allowance to pay for a pizza because Dad had forgotten his wallet. He never repaid me. At the age of 16, I assisted my sister in faking a project in order to graduate. She never said thank you. At 24, I accepted a second job to assist Mom pay her medical bills, only to discover that she had spent half of it on a spa retreat. And the worst part? I said nothing. I swallowed it each time, thinking it was simply what you did for your family. They will see it someday. However, they didn't. They identified a trend, a flaw, or a system that could be exploited. I recall the first time I became accustomed to infrastructure like a walking account number. It was during Dad's business downturn. I volunteered to help him reorganize his files just to keep him going. 3 weeks later, my name appeared on a loan application that I had never signed. I approached him, and he laughed. "You've always had good credit," he replied, as if that clarified everything. That night, I reviewed my own report. He'd used it 5 times, all to float something short-term. All are underpaid. I remembered how my sister once requested a temporary login to one of my business products. She said it was for her freelance employment. I handed it to her. She sold it. She sold access to my private platform for $600 to someone I had never met. I only discovered out after I was locked out of my own dashboard. I confronted her. She smiled and added, "It was just sitting there. You weren't using it. Just sit there." Like my presence over holidays. Like my name on the deed. Like the $1.2 million estate, I never lorded over them. They did not recognize me as a person. They recognized opportunity. An open gate. Rachel asked me months before the wedding if I trusted them. I recall taking too long to say yes. She stared at me and said, "You don't trust them, you just feel responsible for them." And she was correct. Everything came together gradually. Jokes about my being the family's wallet. The tiny cuts, such as Mom saying at brunch, "We're just trying to be nice, including you. You don't think you matter." And everyone laughed, thinking it was clever. The house was the last chess piece. They assumed I wouldn't fight. I'd shrug and say, "Okay," like I'd always done since they'd taught me to. But they didn't comprehend that the silence they mistook for weakness was actually the basis of something considerably more frightening. Awareness. I wasn't blind anymore. I wasn't soft. I was observing the pattern formation in high resolution. Mom never asked. She declared. Dad never defended. He vanished. My sister never elaborated. She profited. And every time I gave, it took, as if it was owed. I recall being 8 years old and standing at the kitchen counter while Mom whispered to Dad, "He won't say no. He's easy." In their thoughts, I was not even present in the room. I was a tool. The answer is yes by default. And now? Now they've put my name on something I haven't touched. They called it a family enterprise. Someone signed something without discussing it with me. But they forgot something. I wasn't 8 years old anymore. I was not the fixer, helper, or backup plan. I was a man with an action, a man who had created a wall around his future. A man had been quietly watching for over 2 decades before eventually seeing the game for what it was. They anticipated quiet. What they received was clarity. And I had just started designing the collapse. They assumed the signature indicated triumph. They expected me to wake up, see the paperwork, and fold as I always did. I did not. I awoke early, before daylight. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I let the numbers go through my mind. 1.2 million, 1 estate, 6 efforts to take what wasn't theirs, and 1 final shutdown. By 6 a.m., I had signed in. My PC resembled a war room, with financial displays, ownership documents, recorded phone calls, and time-stamped text messages. The first thing I did was digitally secure the deed. I sent all alerts over a secure legal channel. Any changes or access attempts would result in alarms. Then came the trust account. I made it before the engagement, when I observed my sister looking through a drawer labeled personal. The trust was divided into 3 categories: estate upkeep, emergency buffer, and discretionary support. Everything is undetectable and completely under my control. I revoked discretionary access. My lawyer received the ping and validated it within 20 minutes. Then, I dug deeper. They were still using phone lines from the family plan I had paid for. I did not cancel them. I reassigned ownership and gave them 72 hours to accept the transfer or lose service completely. My dad's car is registered to me. Yes, it is a gift, but there are strings attached. That afternoon, I called the DMV, contacted the registrar to amend ownership information, and booked the pickup with the tow firm. Not out of spite or precision. They declared open season on my life. Now I'm closing the gates. Rachel stepped in while I was on hold with the cloud service provider. She did not say anything at first, simply set a coffee next to me, looked at the screen and asked, "Do they know what's coming?" "No," I replied. "They really don't." By noon, the revocation letters had been sent. Bank access was revoked. Joint card is frozen. I emailed my CPA a final email to confirm. Going on, no signatures other than mine would be honored. Period. I also added a last clause to the estate's operating agreement. Anyone who attempts to transfer title fraudulently will be permanently barred from future trust disbursements. At 2:13 p.m., I texted my sister one message. "You created a future that you were never entitled to. It finishes today." Then I signed out. That night they returned, boxes in hand, eyes flaming. My sister's voice seemed softer now. "We didn't mean anything by it," she explained. "Mom thought you'd be okay with it. You weren't using the house anyway." That sentence. You weren't using the house anyway. I opened the front door halfway, allowing them to see my face but not step inside. It wasn't about the house, I explained. It was about how certain you were that I'd never say no. My father stepped forward. Let's talk inside. No, I replied. We talk here. My sister put down one of the cartons. We packed up our stuff. We're sorry, okay? We shouldn't have. I shut her off. It's already with the lawyers, everything. You call the lawyer. She snapped. This is family. Exactly, I replied. And the family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't assume ownership. Family doesn't erase someone, then cry at the gate. Silence. Then Dad did what he normally does and attempted to change the tone. You're overreacting. We didn't take anything. The title hasn't been processed yet. You're right, I replied. Because I stopped it. I could see it landing its first real hit. They realized they had underestimated me. For years I pretended to be the generous, calm, and problem-solving kind. But I was not generous. I was strategic. And now, open support has ended. The next morning, I got into my private records archive and concluded the sequence of 3 letters. One to the estate attorney, one to the title office's compliance division, and one to the local financial review board, all of which flagged the potential fraud inquiry. Rachel read each one before I submitted it. They won't come back from this, she said. I'm not asking them to, I explained. By Thursday, the estate was triple locked. My accounts were secure. Every asset I granted them access to was now out of reach. But I wasn't finished. I contacted the private foundation that had been funding some of Mom's prescriptions based on my referral. I canceled the support politely, legally, and formally. The email was nice. The impact would not be the same. That afternoon I drove to the property. I walked through it alone. I stood in the hallway, where we used to hang our childish artwork. They were gone, replaced by silence. I opened the security application. I removed their access from the smart lock. I then altered the code. I exited through the front door, looked around, and saw it close. And it was finished. No fury, no theatrics, just a reset. I knew they would come undone. I just didn't anticipate it to be so fast and noisy. It began with a brief period of silence that led me to believe they were absorbing the blow. However, by the next morning, my phone was buzzing like a malfunctioning alarm. 17 missed calls and 9 voicemails came from home, a name I hadn't updated in years. I didn't listen. I emailed the first voicemail to my attorney. Then I switched to airplane mode and went back to breakfast. Rachel watched me chew as if I were expecting something to explode. Do you think they'll show up again? I nodded. They don't know any other play. They arrived at 3:04 p.m., same street, same driveway. Their posture reflects the same phony humility. My father stood there with his arms crossed, looking more like a frustrated foreman than a father. My sister paced in front of the gate, phone in hand and filming herself. I anticipated it would be up on Facebook with captions like, "You never know how cold someone is until you see them stop loving you." I watched from upstairs. I did not move. Then came the shouting. My sister started off loud and uncontrolled. You really think this is going to work? You think you're going to freeze us out and look like the victim? She flung a manila packet at the barrier. It crumpled to the ground, like a botched protest sign. You can't do this to your family, she exclaimed. I opened the window slightly and responded with a single sentence. I didn't do this. You did. That ignited the fuse. Dad stepped in. This isn't over. You don't get to just lock us out and pretend like you're clean. He was trembling not from melancholy, but from wrath. Not the sort that comes from heartbreak, but the kind that results from losing control. He yelled things I hadn't heard from him since I was 13 and neglected to maintain the grass. You think you can treat me like I don't matter? He spat at me. You think because you've got money you can treat us like garbage? You owe us. 3 words. You owe United States. Rachel arrived in the doorway behind me. Do they think this is helping their case? They think volume equals power, I told them. They did not notice that I had already moved on. At 6:12 p.m., the emails began. The first came from Mom's account. Subject line: "Let us be reasonable." I did not even open it. The preview said plenty. "It is not too late to rectify this before the attorneys become involved." Too late. I sent it to my attorney. The second email arrived 10 minutes later from my father's work account. A PDF attachment. Cease and desist. I laughed. They really tried to change the script. Accused me of creating mental distress, denying legitimate access to jointly used assets, and, my favorite, wrongful revocation of shared family property. It read like a sitcom written by someone who believed drama was the same as logic. What's my reply? I did not send one. Instead, I wrote a response through my lawyer. 3 pages. I've attached every legal document that proves sole ownership, included images, login data, and even a time-stamped photo of the property key handover 2 years ago. We have attached a closing paragraph. Your client has no legal claims. If the harassment continues, further legal action will be taken. This is an official communication. By Friday, they had lost the mask completely. My sister appeared on Instagram Live. I knew she would. She cried on television, spoke betrayal, said she'd never been so upset, and said she was being punished for being close to our parents. Her followers ate it up. Leave emoji-filled comments and be strong, Queen. But I was not watching the drama. I was looking for mistakes. She made one. She unintentionally flipped the camera during the live, displayed the interior of my father's office, specifically the desk drawer where we had stored the emergency binder. This one contains all of my account passwords. The one I locked and deleted last year. They didn't realize I had taken it. My lawyer flagged it. They were warned that if they touched anything or attempted to mimic me online, they would face criminal penalties. So we waited. It did not take long. Sunday afternoon, my bank detected a login attempt from an unidentified device using an old recovery email address associated with my father's ISP. 2 minutes later, an effort to access my digital trust dashboard was unsuccessful. I locked everything again, reported the incident to the relevant service provider, and forwarded it to the same legal team I hired 3 years earlier. This time, we've added a criminal cyber investigation trigger. At 10:27 p.m., Mom texted. Only 3 words. What did you do? I didn't respond. On Monday, the situation worsened. A cousin contacted one of the few people I still liked. Hey, she said cautiously. Your mom's saying you've gone off the rails, that you're destroying the family. I just answered, she destroyed it. I just turned the lights on. That night, the group chat erupted. Apparently, my sister distributed screenshots of our estate documents to extended family in an attempt to spin the tale. I claimed to have stolen pooled wealth. They claimed I was emotionally unstable, even forwarded a cropped email from me that she had clearly edited. However, she failed to crop the timestamp. The true version existed, and my lawyer had it. We've compiled everything. Falsification, slander, illegal access attempts. We sent an official notification. Any additional public defamation will lead to a lawsuit. You have 72 hours to retract all statements and provide written apologies. Or we file. That night, my father texted again, only one line. You are turning your back on blood. What's my reply? I am moving away from those who merely took. The next morning, Rachel and I went out to breakfast. A quiet diner. There are no phones, no noise, only sunlight and pancakes. I looked at her and said, I think the storm's almost over. She smiled. Number. It's just moving over to their house now. They shaped a variant. I tell the truth. It began as a whisper campaign. Cousins whom I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly sent texts like, I heard things got complicated, but maybe you should call your mom. Even one of my former high school pals texted, your sister posted something really off. Are you okay? That's when I realized the transformation had begun. They were not satisfied with guilt. They intended to burn my name before I could speak. My sister started posting cryptic stories with black screens and white lettering. Some people reject those who raised them. You believe you know somebody? Mom shared an old photo of all 5 of us, captioned, "Before money changed everything." A stream of sympathy emojis poured in, and Denise remarked, "You were such a close family. So sad to see it fall apart." That's when I stopped playing defense. The next morning I emailed every cousin, family, and mutual acquaintance who had been drawn into their spin cycle. I did not rant. I did not accuse. I sent a 14-page PDF with timestamps, screenshots, bank transactions, legal papers, a timeline of events, and one message at the top. You are free to believe whatever you wish. But this is what really happened. I didn't explain anything else. I just signed it with my name and let the stillness do its work. It did not take long. By lunchtime, 2 cousins responded. I had no idea. One of them even forwarded me a private message my sister sent, instructing them to disregard everything Alex says because he's spinning it. That one was identified and sent to my attorney. At 3:42 p.m., I received an unexpected call from my sister's old manager. I hadn't spoken with her in years. She said, "I know this is awkward, but she listed you as a professional reference." And after reading what's going around online, she trailed off. I did not rescue her. I merely stated I'd be careful about putting anything in writing on her behalf. By 5 p.m., I was on the phone with the family's former accountant, whom I had looped back. And after finding the fraudulent documentation, he said quietly, "They're cracking." "Alex, you were right. There are gaps in every story they told in the digital logs you provided. Devastating." He paused. "You want to press charges yet?" I did not respond straight away since this was not about vengeance. It was not even about punishment. It was about the finish of the game. So I answered, "Not yet. But we will go public." That evening, I met with my attorney. We prepared a public statement that was brief, professional, and informative. There are no adjectives, only data, dates, activities, and verifiable outcomes. We cited fraudulent title transfers, improper financial access, and recent slander. We posted it to a neutral platform and linked it in a personal post. When someone uses silence to rewrite history, sometimes the only response is truth. Here's mine. The post did not go viral. It immediately gained popularity. By midnight, there were more than 11,000 views. Hundreds of comments. Not all of them are supportive, but they are enough. Enough for the equilibrium to alter. Enough to stop their story in its tracks. Misunderstandings began to develop. The next morning, the CPA contacted me. They've gone quiet. At 11:17 a.m., I received a call from a private number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my mother. Her voice was gentle and tiny. "We didn't know it would go this far. Please call me." I did not. Instead, I issued the final letter through my attorney, which included a cease and desist for internet defamation, as well as a formal release. All previous support has been terminated. Any subsequent interactions will be screened through legal counsel alone. I attached a last clause. Silence is now demanded, not desired. That afternoon, my sister removed half of her posts. My father removed his profile. My mother blocked me. I didn't care. I wasn't searching for reconciliation. I was simply ensuring that the truth prevailed over their falsehood. For the first time in years, it did. They arrived one last time. There was no shouting, no crying, no phony apologies. Mom stood alone outside the gate, carrying a photo album as if it were a peace offering. She buzzed once and waited. "Want me to handle it?" Rachel inquired. "No," I replied. "This one's mine." I stepped out without opening the gate, instead standing on the porch with my arms crossed. Mom appeared smaller and older than I remembered. However, the album in her hands is a memory-masked attempt to reconnect. "We were wrong," she explained. "But you made it cruel." I did not speak. She opened the album and turned it to face the camera, as if I'd melt at the sight of newborn photos. "You were always the quiet one. The good one. That's why you thought I'd never leave," I explained. Her lips stiffened. "We just want things back. They were never yours to begin with." "Alex," she said again. But I shut her off, calm, final. "I didn't leave because of the house or the money. I left because you never saw me, only what I could provide." She blinked. Only once. So that's it? I nodded. You did not lose your dinner. I've stepped back to defend my tranquility. Then I turned and went back inside. Left her standing there with an album full of memories she used as currency. And this time, I did not look.